A single mother is a disgrace to this family. Get out of this house within 24 hours. It happened the very moment the candles on my 32nd birthday cake went out. The voice belonged to my father, Jason. His eyes pierced through me, not with the warmth of a parent looking at his daughter, but with the same cold contempt one might reserve for filth on the street. Just minutes earlier, we had all been sitting around the dining table, pretending to be a perfectly ordinary family. My 6-year-old daughter, Layla, had clapped her hands with a bright smile, saying, "Mom, happy birthday." My father, mother, my twin sister Brooke, and her husband Dylan were all gathered at the table. I hope we can keep living peacefully in this house from now on. With that small wish in my heart, I had gently blown out the candles. The sound of the family's applause filled the room. But the moment it stopped, my father's smiling face vanished as if a mask had fallen away, and his eyes turned to ice. I've decided to give this house to Brooke and Dylan. In the stillness that followed, as if time itself had frozen, my gaze slid across the table. The cake Layla had picked, the dishes my mother had set out, and this very dining table set. Everything had been bought with the money I earned through sweat and exhaustion. I repaired the leaking roof, fixed the creaking floors, and devoted everything I had so that this family could live comfortably. And yet, Dad, what are you— Instead of answering my trembling voice, my father crossed his arms and jerked his chin toward me. Sitting beside him, my twin sister Brooke smirked triumphantly, as if she had been waiting for this moment, while my mother fidgeted with her napkin, her downcast eyes showing a mixture of guilt and relief. I see. So this wasn't just my father's idea. Everyone here, everyone except me, was in on it. A chill spread through my stomach as if it had been filled with ice water. I could feel Layla clutching the hem of my dress with anxious eyes. I couldn't let myself lose control in front of her. I slowly set down my fork, stifled my trembling, and looked straight at the merciless people sitting before me. Don't make me laugh. My voice echoed low and steady through the silent dining room. What did you just say? Say that again. My father didn't so much as twitch an eyebrow at my defiance. Rather, there was even a hint of contempt in his frozen expression. Did you not hear me? I said there's no place for a single mother in this house. You are a stain on this family. That's right, Avery. It's a nuisance for us if you keep staying here forever, Brooke added, her voice laced with poisonous sweetness. My mother, as always, kept her head lowered and said nothing. I understood then. No matter what I shouted now, my words would never reach these people's hearts. They had already decided long ago to cast me out. And more than anything, I couldn't bear to hurt Layla any further, who was looking up at me with frightened eyes. I slowly stood up and gently took Layla's hand. Layla, shall we go to your room? My voice was surprisingly calm, even to myself. Behind me, I heard Brooke let out a faint, mocking laugh, but I didn't turn around. They probably thought I would pack my bags while crying and leave quietly, that I would accept this humiliation and slink away. No, that was not what would happen. As I tucked Layla into bed, countless thoughts swirled through my mind. Why? If being a single mother was such a disgrace, why now? It's already been 6 years since I returned to this house. And more importantly, why are they trying to drive me out? The very person who has been the family's main source of financial support. Their current lifestyle exists only because I've been paying for most of the living expenses. For them to cast me out is far too irrational, far too unnatural. It can't be just my father's pride or concern for appearances. There must be something else. Something far greater and uglier behind this contradiction. Something that would outweigh the loss of my financial support. I was certain of it. Mom? As I stroked my anxious daughter's hair, I strengthened my resolve. It's all right, Layla. Mommy will protect you, no matter what. It was 6 years ago, when Layla was born, that I returned to my parents' house. Layla's father was a man who was good at talking about dreams, but lacked the strength to live in reality. Our life together was unstable, and he constantly relied on me. When he found out that I was pregnant with Layla, he quietly disappeared from my life. Fortunately, my career as an interior designer was going well. I had more than enough financial stability to raise my daughter on my own. But as I struggled to balance my demanding work schedule and childcare, my parents made me an offer. Why don't you come back home? Brooke just got married and moved out. We'll help you with raising the baby, and in return, you can help us a little financially. It wasn't a bad deal for me, nor was it for them. so I accepted their offer. From that day on, I continued to provide financial support to this household. At the time, this house inherited from my grandfather had grown old and worn down. I paid for the repairs to the leaking roof, remodeled the outdated kitchen, and replaced most of the furniture in the living room. In exchange for their childcare support, I kept this family and this home afloat. It wasn't out of love, it was closer to a contract. And now they were trying to break that contract unilaterally and in the worst possible way. When Layla finally began to breathe softly in sleep, I quietly got up from the bed and gazed out into the darkness beyond the window. My father's cruel words were not the product of a passing emotion. No, they were the final notice of something far more calculated, an ice-cold, premeditated plan. And I had every reason to believe that. Come to think of it, the atmosphere in this house had been tense for months. Whenever I entered the living room, the hushed conversations between my parents and Brooke would stop abruptly, as if someone had flipped a switch. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But as time passed, it became more and more obvious. I once saw my mother hastily hide a letter under the table when she noticed me walk in. Just the other day, Brooke was looking at a bank pamphlet, and when I approached her, she shrieked and shoved it into her bag. And from their whispered conversations, I had caught fragmented words. Ownership, collateral, documents. Each piece that once seemed meaningless now came together tonight, completing an ugly picture with the final piece. Get out within 24 hours. They had been scheming behind my back, about this house and about my money. This was no longer some petty family quarrel. No, this smelled of something far darker, something that might even be called a crime. My hands were trembling as I gripped my smartphone. From the list of contacts, I searched for the one person I could truly trust. Zoe had been my closest friend since our college days, and now she was a successful attorney. It was already late at night. But without hesitation, I pressed the call button. After a few rings, I heard Zoe's firm, composed voice on the other end. Avery, what's wrong? Why are you calling at this hour? Just hearing her voice calmed the storm inside me. Zoe, I'm sorry for calling so late. I need your help. As a lawyer. The moment she heard the steel in my otherwise calm tone, she seemed to understand that something serious had happened. Her voice shifted into her professional register. Of course. Tell me what's going on. I spoke without emotion, recounting only the facts in a steady, detached voice. On the other end of the line, Zoe listened silently, not interrupting once. When I finished, she took a quiet breath before speaking. I see. I understand the situation. Avery, this might be even more serious than you think. Yes, that's why I called you. This isn't just a family matter anymore. It's a legal one. They're trying to drive me out of this house while plotting something behind my back. I want to uncover their plan and protect my rights and Layla's future. Zoe's voice was filled with strength as she replied, I promise I'll be your strongest ally. Thank you, Zoe. What should I do first? I think I should start by finding physical evidence of their plan. Exactly. You're inside the house, which means you're in the best position to do it. Look for anything. Letters from the bank, contracts, documents of any kind. When you find something, don't touch it. Take a photo and send it to me immediately. After hanging up the phone, I waited silently. Before long, I heard Brooke and Dylan downstairs, their triumphant voices carrying through the quiet night. Well then, we'll come back the day after tomorrow. The front door closed, and soon after, the sound of a car engine faded into the distance. Perhaps an hour passed. The noise of the television in the living room went silent, followed by the faint sound of my parents' bedroom door closing. The entire house was wrapped in deep, suffocating silence. My destination was my father's study. It was the first place that came to mind when I thought of where they might hide something. Fortunately, the door wasn't locked. I slipped inside carefully, making sure not to make a sound. The air inside was cool and heavy, brushing against my skin. Without hesitation, I went straight to the desk. The top drawer was locked, but I didn't panic. After all these years living in this house, I knew my father's habits by heart. On the bookshelf stood a framed photo of my late grandfather. Behind that frame, taped to the back, was the small key to this drawer. A soft click echoed through the silent room. The drawer was packed with a mess of papers, but my eyes locked onto a single envelope among them. It bore the logo of a major bank, and through the small window on the front, I saw the name Avery. My name. My heart thudded once, hard enough to hurt. I pulled out the envelope and slid out its contents. It was a copy of a home equity loan agreement. The loan amount jumped out at me, $20,000. And beside the name listed as the debtor, mine, was a forged signature that mimicked my handwriting with disturbing precision. So I was right. My intuition had been right all along. They had used my credit, my very life, as collateral to get money. My blood boiled with rage, and yet my mind stayed cold, perfectly clear. Following Zoe's instructions, I took out my smartphone and carefully photographed every page of the contract, one by one, without making a sound. Then I sent her the images with a single message. I found it. After that, I placed the documents back into the envelope, closed the drawer, locked it again, and returned the key to its hiding spot. Everything looked exactly as it had before. They still had no idea. They couldn't possibly imagine that I already knew everything. Then, to retrieve the final piece of evidence that would seal their guilt, I turned and quietly made my way toward the closet in my room. Inside the closet was a single locked case, something I had kept carefully guarded ever since the day my grandfather passed away, and I took responsibility for all the inheritance procedures. Inside that case was the original notarized copy of my grandfather's last will and testament. With trembling fingers, I turned the pages until my eyes stopped on one particular line. After my death, the ownership of the house and land in which I currently reside shall be inherited in full by my granddaughter, Avery. Shortly before he died, my grandfather had called me alone into his hospital room and said, "Avery, I want to tell you this myself. I've decided to leave this house to you. It's written clearly in my will." I remember how stunned I was, but he continued, "My son, your father, is not someone capable of protecting this home. Neither is anyone else in the family. Once I'm gone and they learn about this, things will turn ugly. They'll try to manipulate you, to convince you to give up your rights. So, Avery, until you decide the time has truly come to protect this house, you must not tell anyone about this. Promise me." I gripped his wrinkled hand tightly and swore to keep that promise. Fortunately, my father and mother wanted nothing to do with the inheritance process, calling it too much of a hassle. Everything was left to me. None of them ever bothered to check the contents of the will. They simply assumed my father had inherited the house. I kept my grandfather's secret and never corrected their misunderstanding. Now I placed the notarized will into a clear file and sent a message to Zoe. This is my final trump card. Then, looking up at the dark ceiling, I whispered, "Grandpa, please watch over me. I'll protect this house and our future no matter what." A moment later, my phone vibrated softly. It was a message from Zoe. "Unbelievable. Avery, this is a clear case of fraud and identity falsification. I'll start preparing immediately." I then took out a large folder I had kept all these years. Inside were every single receipt and invoice for the money I had spent on this house over the years. $5,000 for roof repairs, the invoice for the kitchen renovation, the receipt for the new dining table set. I photographed each one carefully, making sure the dates and amounts were visible, and sent them all to Zoe. Along with the message, "List of physical evidence. They won't be able to talk their way out of this." That night, I held Layla just a little tighter than usual as we lay in bed together. 2 days from now, this house would truly become what it was always meant to be. Ours. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen at my usual time, acting as if nothing had happened. I made pancakes for Layla and poured myself a cup of coffee. My calm composure seemed to irritate my parents deeply. "Avery, what do you think you're doing?" My father's angry shout came from the living room. "Didn't you hear me? I told you to pack your things and get out by tomorrow." Placing the freshly cooked pancakes onto a plate, I replied without turning around, my voice serene. "Oh, Dad, why are you in such a hurry? I'm not going anywhere. This is my house." For a moment, he was struck speechless, and my mother gasped, "My goodness." They couldn't possibly imagine that I knew the truth. To them, I was just a delusional daughter refusing to face reality. "Don't be ridiculous. Enough of this nonsense." "Come on, Layla, breakfast is ready," I said, completely ignoring his shouting as I sat down at the table with my daughter. Even as my parents hurled insults, "Pack your things right now." "Have you no shame?" I didn't respond. I simply waited quietly, letting time pass. Then came the following afternoon, the day everything would change. In the living room, my father and mother sat nervously watching TV, fidgeting endlessly. My silence during the previous day had clearly disrupted their plan. They kept glancing at the clock, tapping their feet impatiently. While Layla and I shared cookies for a snack, my father finally lost his composure and jumped up from the sofa. "Avery, enough! Today's the deadline." My mother followed, her voice shrill and hysterical. "That's right. Brooke and Dylan will be here any minute." "Perfect timing," I said calmly. "I've been waiting for Brooke to arrive." Just then, as if on cue, the cheerful sound of the doorbell echoed through the house. On the monitor appeared Brooke and Dylan, both beaming with smug smiles. In their hands, they carried a bottle of champagne, no doubt to celebrate their new life. When I opened the door, Brooke brushed past me as though I were invisible. "Oh, Avery, you're still here? Haven't finished packing yet?" Her voice dripped with false sympathy. "That's right. When are you leaving?" My father's furious voice rang out again, no different from before. I smiled calmly and said, "I can't leave yet. There's still one very important guest who hasn't arrived." At that exact moment, almost as if on cue, the doorbell rang again. With my family's puzzled eyes fixed on me, I walked to the door and opened it. Standing there, dressed in a black suit and wearing a composed expression, was Zoe. I invited her into the living room and, in front of my bewildered family, announced clearly, "Allow me to introduce her. This is my attorney, Zoe." "Attorney?" My father was the first to speak. His voice wavered, laced with confusion and barely concealed panic. "What is the meaning of this, Avery?" "The meaning of this?" I replied coolly. "That's exactly what I should be asking you, Dad." I calmly placed two documents on the table. One was a copy of the forged home equity loan contract bearing my falsified signature. The other was the notarized will proving who the true owner of this house really was. What is this?" "This," I said, "is the loan agreement you took out in my name. $20,000 using my identity." The moment those words left my mouth, I saw the color drain from both Brooke's and my mother's faces. My father muttered under his breath, "This is absurd." "Absurd?" I said sharply. "Yes, you're right. It's absurd that you actually went through with it." Then I slid the will across the table toward them. "And here's your second mistake. You seem to have believed this house belonged to you, but unfortunately for you, it doesn't. Grandfather's will clearly states that he left this house to me, Avery. I suppose you've already realized that by now." "That can't be true." My father lunged toward the document, but Zoe stopped his hand firmly. Why do you even have this?" he stammered, glancing helplessly at my mother and Brooke. "You needed money, so you went to the bank, didn't you? You tried to take out a loan under your own name, thinking this was your house. But the bank must have told you the truth, didn't they? This property belongs not to you, but to your daughter, Miss Avery." At that, all three of their faces froze in sheer terror. It was a direct hit. "You found out the truth there, didn't you? And instead of despairing, you came up with an even more evil plan. You impersonated me, the real owner of this house, took the money, and once you were done, you'd throw me out and take over this home. Am I right?" The announcement at my birthday party had been their ugly signal of celebration, the cheers for the $20,000 they'd extracted from the bank. Faced with that fact, they could not utter a single word in reply. "Wait, Avery, this is—" My father was the first to speak. "It was for the family. We needed some money. Brooke was in trouble." "Some money? What could possibly require such a large sum as $20,000? I scanned them one by one with eyes that felt empty of emotion. "I had Zoe investigate you." At that single statement, Brooke's face was drained of color. "Your credit card statements, the records of the foolish investment scam you fell for. It's all here." I slid a copy of the report Zoe had sent across the table. Why did they suddenly need $20,000? Zoe had hired an investigator and thoroughly traced Brooke's cash flow for me. The report's contents were far worse than I had imagined. Foolish, selfish, and reckless. Huge credit card debts. Extravagant out-of-reach spending behind glamorous social media posts. And desperate, Brooke had reached for a get-rich-quick fraudulent investment scheme. She had lost what little savings she had and driven her debts close to $20,000. You used my future as collateral to pay for your vanity and your debts. Am I wrong? At my precise accusation, Brooke gasped and went pale. The solution you chose was to take everything from your other daughter. With what right do people like you call yourselves a family? I fixed my gaze on Brooke, who glared at me with trembling fury. Brooke, your habit of wasteful spending and your pride are the root cause of all this. When you fooled the bank clerk, pretending to be me, and walked away with $20,000, how did that make you feel? She trembled, lips quivering, unable to answer. You didn't just want money. You were jealous of everything I built, and you craved the sense of superiority that would come from driving me out of this house into despair. Isn't that right? Dylan looked on with a sickly, detached expression, as if this were someone else's drama. This was the true face of my family. When things got inconvenient, they shifted blame, begged for forgiveness, then flew into rage. There was no love, no bond, no honesty, nothing at all. Don't you dare, Brooke shrieked and jumped to her feet. If only you weren't here, everything would have worked out. It's always like this with you. You're always the perfect child, the brilliant designer. I've suffered in your shadow for so long. This house was supposed to be mine. A single mother like you doesn't deserve to be happy. Brooke screamed at me, hurling insults, and in that instant, enough. My voice, colder than ice, took control of the room. Seeing Brooke's ugly true nature wiped away the last sliver of doubt in my heart. Tomorrow I will file criminal charges against all of you for identity fraud, and I will also bring a civil suit. A lawsuit? My father croaked. What are you saying, Avery? You're going to sue your family? Be quiet. My voice, low and sharp in a way that surprised even me, rang through the living room. You have no right to speak those words. And Brooke, thanks to you, I am utterly resolved. What you will face is not a new life, but the crimes you committed and the punishment that follows. I pointed to the front door. Leave this house now. Do not sully my home any further. My father still tried a last stand, beginning to say, What are you saying? This is my... Zoe cut him off. Mr. Jason, you should stop right there for your own good. Zoe delivered the final warning to the stunned family. Listen, the house you are standing in is legally Avery's property. You are attempting to defy her clear order to vacate, which constitutes criminal trespass. If we contact the police right now, you will be arrested on the spot not only for fraud, but also for the ongoing offense. In that case, the possibility of receiving a suspended sentence will be almost nil. Her concrete, cold legal terms as an attorney utterly shattered their last bluff. Make a wise decision. Your belongings will be removed at a later date and time designated by us, under supervision. For now, leave this house immediately. Zoe's words were the knockout blow. The sound of the front door slamming echoed, announcing the end of a long battle and the beginning of a new life. The next day, I went to the police station with Zoe. The criminal complaint was formally accepted. At the same time, the civil lawsuit we filed proceeded smoothly, thanks to Zoe's flawless work. Several months later, the day of the verdict finally arrived. In the criminal trial, my father, mother, and Brooke and Dylan, all four, were found guilty of fraud and forgery of a private document. Although their social standing and lack of prior offenses spared them from actual prison time, they received heavy sentences with suspended terms. The civil trial, too, ended in a complete victory for us. The $20,000 home equity loan taken in my name was, of course, declared void. The obligation to repay the bank was imposed jointly on those who had actually taken the money. Furthermore, the court recognized the malicious intent behind their actions and ordered them to pay the full amount of damages I had claimed. Even as I watched them hang their heads in the courtroom, I felt no triumph. Only a quiet sense of relief, as though something that had long needed to end had finally done so. After so many years, I had finally emerged from the long, dark tunnel. According to Zoe's later reports, their lives had become difficult since then. They lost their home and were quickly crushed by the burden of debt and compensation payments. My father's pride had been shattered, and Brooke started living a far cry from the glamorous life she had always desired, forced into a modest, constrained existence. Yet even hearing that, I felt no pity. It was nothing more than the natural consequence of their own actions. That day in court, when everything was finally settled, I gained something truly priceless: freedom. As for Layla and me, our lives have become remarkably peaceful. The home my grandfather left to me, the one I had fought so hard to protect, is now filled only with warmth. Freed at last from the curse once called family, I took my daughter's hand, and together we have begun a new life, one built on true independence and quiet strength.